Hello, hello. This is part two of whatever anthropology class you're taking with me, our lesson on language. So welcome back. This segment of the language lesson is about descriptive linguistics. And I think we're going to get into some historical linguistics later as well, if not in this part, in one of the upcoming parts. So descriptive linguistics. This is where we're kind of breaking down parts of language. So we've talked a little bit about potential origins of language, some clues to the beginnings of human language, and now we're looking at what it actually is. So descriptive linguistics is one kind of subfield of linguistic anthropology, and in it we will study the sounds and methods of construction used by a language. So what are the parts of language? So we've looked at a little bit of cultural anthropology, and we have seen that anthropologists conduct their research in small remote communities, often, many times. And often the people in these communities will speak a language that has no writing system. So the anthropologist will have to come up with a script or a way to write out the language. Out of this practice, several key elements of language have been identified. One is a phoneme. So a phoneme is a part of language, and it represents the smallest unit of sound that can make a difference in meaning. For example, the English letters B and P represent sounds that are very similar, and yet they distinguish meaning. So whenever I say the words big and pig, if you are a native English speaker, you will be able to discern the difference between those two sounds. And that's one thing that can change if between different language speakers. Somebody who speaks a different language might not be able to tell the difference between big and pig. They might sound similar to them. So anyway, in the English language, b and p are phonemes that can make things mean different things, make words mean different things. This brings us to the term phonology, which describes the study of phonemes within a language, or kind of more generally, how languages sound. Language sounds, okay? So we talked about phonemes, kind of the smallest sound that can change meaning in a language. Let's move on to morphemes. The morphemes represent the smallest units of sound that carry meaning on their own. So b and p, or b and p, don't necessarily mean anything. They can change meanings when they're added to other sounds. They have no inherent meaning of themselves. So those will be phonemes. But big and pig would be morphemes. So typically, morphemes often form what we more regularly refer to as words, like big and pig. Thus, phonemes are combined to make morphemes, and morphemes are combined to make phrases and sentences. The combination of morphemes within a language is controlled by rules of grammar, which is the structured combination that allows speakers and listeners to make sense of the language. So again, grammar are like the rules. Grammar of the rules of language. So grammar is the structured combination that allows speakers and listeners to make sense of language. Here's some interesting rock art that is symbolic. We're not sure if it represents phonemes or morphemes or anything like that, but it certainly represents an idea. All right, moving on to other aspects of language. So phonemes, morphemes, and grammar are only part of the complex forms of communication. Kinesics is the study of how body movements are used in communication. These gestures, however, are culturally dependent and not universal. So different body language or hand signs can mean different things depending on which culture you're in. For example, the English hand signal for okay is far from okay in other parts of the world. It actually is a rude gesture. So body language plays a big part in communication. Often body language and our actual spoken language will be combined in a person's mind, basically, when we're talking to them. They're not just listening to the words coming out of our mouth, they're watching our body language as well. So back to the OK hand signal. If you travel to Brazil and flash someone an OK sign, you are basically telling them that you think they are an asshole. So this is not an easy mistake to explain away. We need to know the significance of body movements and physical communication. For example, the next time you see debates between candidates for president or another elected office, there will be numerous articles written and interviews given about the significance of body language during the debate. And the commentators will go pretty far to analyze and speculate on what the different body language means. So everything from eye contact to the position of our arms helps us to convey our thoughts and emotions. So that was kinesics, another aspect of human communication that's not necessarily a phoneme or a morpheme. Paralanguage, on the other hand, is the study of the variety of sounds that accompany language. This includes everything from laughter and grunts to crying and screaming. Like, that could be paralanguage. Paralanguage also includes the study of tones used. Take the word dude and all of the different tones you could possibly use to express that word. It could be an exclamation, it could be a question, it could be a way to address someone. Depending on the tone of the way you say dude, they could mean different things. As much as 90% of emotional information is communicated through body movements and paralanguage. No wonder that email and text messaging have developed an extensive set of emoticons, and more often we call them emojis, symbols that indicate the emotional content intended by the sender. So as it turns out, emojis are pretty important, and I'm even seeing changes these days. I mean, in the last 10 to 5 years, I have seen more common use of emojis in professional emails than I ever had before. And even now in some of our learning management systems in online learning, the program is giving instructors the options to put in smiley faces or any emoji, any face emoji with our graded comments. And that's just a recent development that I've noticed in the past year. So we're realizing that these are important because they convey that emotion. And as we know, oftentimes things like texts and emails can be misunderstood, or they can sound ruder than they are. They can sound more apologetic or less apologetic than they actually are. So these emojis can actually help clear things up, and I think that's really interesting. I don't mind seeing emojis in emails or messages. Probably not a good place. They're not a good thing to put in discussion posts, probably. But, you know, I'm kind of neutral about emojis. I can see the importance of them. So I think it's better also at the same time to work on your writing skills to convey what you actually mean with writing. But at the same time, as this lesson states, as much as 90% of our emotional information is communicated through body movements and paralanguage. And emojis kind of make up for what's missing when we're doing electronic communication. So, what was I saying? This lesson is actually wrong. The emojis will decrease the potential for misunderstandings. So that is important. Okay, here are some old-fashioned ones back from when we used to have to combine these different symbols in order to make these emojis. So I think that's pretty interesting to look at. All right, this concludes part 2 of language. Please proceed to part 3 of language, and thank you for listening.